I find myself not reading one book at a time, rather multiple books at a time. For example, The Great Mental Models. This is my toilet book. Wake up in the morning, try and figure out what the different mental models that exist are. The quality of your thinking depends on the models that are in your head. Something for a nighttime reading. The Alchemist, wanting to dream about a story where I find myself as the hero. Survival First, The Rebel Entrepreneur's Guide to Risk, Riches, and Immortality. I read this book when I have to think through my business and what kind of risks I'm taking and what kind of rewards I'm getting off. The Tao Beyond Time. I read this book when I want to connect to the heroes of the past and find certain morals and principles to live life by. Lastly, Second Brain. Building the second brain when I find myself recognizing that there is an information overload and how could I properly organize stuff. It's incredible, isn't it? The thoughts, ideas, and discoveries that it takes authors months, years to put together can be distilled into something that we can hold in our hands and absorb in just hours or days. That's the magic of books. Let us step into the mind of the greatest thinkers, travel through time, explore worlds we never dreamed of. But it still falls short sometimes because I find myself juggling through all of these books at one time and I end up losing out on context and ideas. So this is where advanced voice mode with ChatGPT has completely revived how I go about reading books. Today I'm going to show 4 ways that you could use the advanced voice technology to enhance your book reading experience and make you a better reader and a better writer. If you find yourself reading philosophical books, sometimes the text gets pretty verbose or even ends up in being in situations where not necessarily knowing what the terms or phrases are. So I like to use advanced voice mode just to hang out in the background and go through the book and read out loud a passage when I come across it and ask it for more information where it feels like I might not be necessarily understanding what the author might fully be trying to convey. We will not walk through each of the principles set out by Lewis, as that would take an entire book. But consider, for example, the law of general beneficence and the law of specific beneficence. Each of these laws finds support in the biblical, classical, and Eastern traditions. Could you do a breakdown of the law of general beneficence and the law of special beneficence?
This passage underscores the universality of moral principles across cultures and traditions. Both the law of general beneficence and special beneficence resonate with ancient wisdom, showing how humanity, across civilizations, has consistently recognized the importance of balancing universal kindness with specific obligations to close relations. For instance, in biblical traditions, general beneficence is reflected in the command to love your neighbor as yourself, while special beneficence is seen in the directive to honor one's parents and care for family members. In classical philosophy, the Stoics emphasized a cosmopolitan view of kindness, general beneficence, while Aristotle spoke about the particular duties of friendship and kinship, special beneficence.
I have a video editing staffing agencies where I put editors on brands and businesses. Sometimes I keep running into various problems as I grow the business. This book by my friend Alexander allows me to get further insight into how am I looking at risk in various parts of my business. Here's an excerpt where he shares, domino risk is what happens after something happens. Domino risk is important because it forces you to ask the follow-up question. And then what? Domino risk sums up the consequences of each fallen domino. I want to do a breakdown of a scenario that I'm running into. My top editor for a brand that I've placed him on is getting poached by someone else and he's leaving. And he's going to potentially even leave without notice. How do I go about mitigating this using the concept of domino risk? And what are some other concepts that the author might talk about in the book that I have to look to see what I can do to avoid a situation like this?
The concept of domino risk suggests that when one issue occurs, it can set off a chain reaction of larger problems if not addressed proactively. Here's how you can address the potential dominoes proactively. 1. Cross-training your team. Action. Train multiple editors to understand the brand's workflow and preferences. so they can step in immediately if needed. Benefit: reduces dependency on a single editor and ensures continuity in case of sudden departures. Create a backup talent pool. Action: maintain a pool of pre-vetted freelancers or editors who can be quickly onboarded for urgent needs. Benefit: minimizes the impact of unexpected departures by providing an immediate solution.
Or you could turn to fiction books to try and find parallels between your own life and the heroes within the book. For example, in part 2, the boy comes across a merchant who talks about dreams. The Prophet gave us the Quran and left us just 5 obligations to satisfy during our lives. The most important is to believe only in one true God. The others are to pray 5 times a day, fast during Ramadan, and be charitable to the poor. He stopped there. What's the 5th obligation, the boy asked. 2 days ago, you said that I had never dreamed of travel, the merchant answered. The 5th obligation of every Muslim is a pilgrimage. We're obliged at least once in our lives to visit the holy city of Mecca. Mecca is a lot farther away than the pyramids. When I was young, all I wanted to do was put together enough money to start this shop. I thought that someday I'd be rich and could go to Mecca. Well, why don't you go to the Mecca now? Asked the boy. Because it's the thought of Mecca that keeps me alive. That's what helps me face these days that are all the same. These mute crystals on the shelves, and lunch and dinner at the same horrible cafe. I'm afraid that if my dream is realized, I'll have no reason to go on living. Using the lessons from the boy and the merchant, guide me through an exercise to identify my personal dreams and the fears preventing me from pursuing them.
Here's an exercise inspired by the Alchemist and the lessons from Santiago and the Crystal Merchant to help you reflect on your dreams and overcome the fears holding you back. If fear, money, or time weren't an issue, what would I pursue? The Crystal Merchant dreamed of going to Mecca, but convinced himself it was better to keep the dream alive than risk disappointment. Now ask yourself, have I ever avoided pursuing a dream because I was afraid of what might happen if I succeeded or failed? Step 2. Write down your Mecca. List 1 to 3 goals or aspirations you've deferred. For each one, complete this sentence. My dream is, but I haven't pursued it because... Step 3. Name your fears. Prompt yourself. For each dream, ask, what am I afraid will happen if I try? What am I afraid will happen if I succeed?
I'm slightly embarrassed to say I don't have a whole lot of fiction books on me. This one I picked up on my way from the airport to a national park, and I was able to flip through this entire book every time we found ourselves on the road. It took me maybe 4 hours to 5 hours tops. The book is about a gang of thieves who end up stealing the original of The Great Gatsby amongst a few other F. Scott Fitzgerald's books. And then as it goes along, you find yourself in a beach town and trying to investigate if the owner of this beach town bookstore has stolen the original manuscripts. There's a completely different way of writing when the author describes the situation when they steal the book, comparatively to the life that they find themselves at in a quaint town where the bookstore is in Florida. I liked both parts of it, but I was trying to further understand what about the writing do I like. Analyze how Grisham builds tension in the heist scenes compared to the quieter moments on the island. What are the techniques he uses?
John Grisham's ability to balance tension in high-stakes heist scenes with the slower, atmospheric moments on Camino Island lies in his mastery of pacing, tone, and detail. Let's break down the techniques he uses in each setting, building tension in the heist scenes. Fast-paced pacing, short sentences and quick actions. Grisham uses brief, punchy sentences to create a sense of urgency. For example, open quote, the thieves moved quickly, knowing they had only minutes. The lock was picked, the case was empty, and they were gone. Close quote. In contrast to the heist, Camino Island scenes are slower and more reflective, with lush descriptive prose. Open quote, the bookstore smelled of old paper and polished wood. A ceiling fan hummed lazily, stirring the humid air. Close quote. These longer descriptive sentences encourage the reader to linger in the setting and absorb its atmosphere.
And now, with this tool, like the advanced voice mode, we can experience that even further, dive deeper, understand more, and connect in ideas never thought possible. The coolest aspect about all of this is that you get to take all of these ideas from a book at different times of the day and just dump them into a second brain and never really lose aspect of what these ideas are and store it in a place which you can access it once again. You should also reach out to the author to request to see if they'd be willing to give you a digital copy of it. For the books that are not necessarily uploaded via the PDF, it uses online sources to recognize what the book is about and might lead to a few hallucinations and is not going to get the most accurate text on word by word or page by page. Hence, I would say, buy a book, reach out to the author, and get a copy of the PDF. I want to go visit a place that reflects the desert in the U.S. that he was talking about in The Alchemist. Where could I go travel that I could find myself lost?
Mojave Desert, California. Known for its open, rugged landscapes, the Mojave offers a sense of solitude and reflection.